feel very passionately about my music. I feel very invested in every single utterance that's been made from my guitar or from my voice. My name is Nataanii, and I am a Indigenous woman. I am Dene, and I am also part Oneida, as well as Sisseton Sioux and Blackfoot. The closer that I've come to realizing my sense of self, the more that I've realized that music is inherent to what I am.
Ash knows how to work a crowd, that's for sure. I think that's one of Ash's mystical powers, creating atmosphere.
Music is definitely work for me. And I think it's work for every musician. I have some days where I'll get off of my job and I'll go immediately to start planning and reaching out for shows. Also to be having long band practices, constant writing sessions, like it's a lot of mental work and a lot of learning and a lot of arrangement. I've been doing this since I was probably 16 years old. I started in church arranging worship bands. And so, from 16 till now, I've been doing that work, and that's my skill set, that's my job, that's what I do.
She's very, very serious about what she does, and it's nice to see this like obsessive nature of hers be channeled into something so beautiful.
I do think that everybody should listen to her music. I do think that that is a stipulation for having a good life on earth.
Writing about your life is so pure, and it's so real. I think I try really hard to write about my life all the time, and to be constantly transparent. But also in a way where I usually will revisit it and also try and make the words expand to be relevant to everyone. A lot of times I'll end up with a song, and then at the end of it I will just go through and read it over and over and over again because I didn't realize what I was writing, and it just kind of spilled out. At some point the stories are just beautiful. At some point the stories are just hard, and they all want to be said.
I really fell in love with her voice and her style, and there's even a moment where she sang the words wrong and sort of started this verse over. There's such a grace in the way that she just kept rolling. She felt very comfortable in that realm of making music and self-expression, and that was really inspiring to me.
Everything Must Go is probably close to a 10-year-old song. I was having a really difficult time finding my place, honestly. So I was just listening back to some of my old stuff, because I often do that to take inspiration from to just revisit older mindsets. And so I took all the feelings that I had processed from that time and wrote a song about it, which was essentially that I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I ran away. That song was kind of prophetic in and of its own right, because it was always called Everything Must Go. Well, what ended up happening was that I left Browning and I took nothing with me except for my music equipment.
I spent 15 cents in a discount bin, nurturing all the trouble I'm in, when somewhere along the line
The cost is double, every problem solved. The press repeat, but the decade gone, immortality is alive.
I spent 30 years at a discount rate,
There's this memory that I have where I'm driving down the road with my mom and I'm about 5 years old. And she asks me what I want to be when I grow up. And me not knowing the difference between some words yet, like I said, I was like, I want to be a magician. And she's like, a magician? I was like, yeah, they have like a stick and they play music. And she's like, oh, a musician. She's like, ah, I see. I like to kind of dream that you can perform a magic trick even when no one's there. How much can I put into my music so that if no one was around, it would still do something? Great Falls is a weird place. I have a complicated feeling towards that place because in some ways it does feel like a hometown, more so than anywhere else that I've lived. It was the first place that I felt accepted. Up until that point, I had suffered a lot of racism and really harsh treatment while we were living in Bismarck, North Dakota while I was growing up. And so when we moved to Great Falls, that happened a lot less. It didn't stop happening, but it happened much less than it did before. I remember my first bands. That's always going to be the sweetest memories of being there. Like, you know, I wanted a group of friends and I wanted to play music. And so when I was finally able to start doing that, it was life-changing. I grew up in church services that were revival worship services. So like ecstatic experiences all over the place just via music. Like I remember just like my dad would start preaching, he'd start winding everyone up and he'd be yelling and crying and he'd be impassioned and saying all of these things and you know, people would start playing and back behind him. And eventually before you know it, it's just like, it just bubbles up and it buoys and then it blows up. And there was this feeling, you don't know what it is until you experience it. All I knew was that it was really important, that it was something that I needed. Being a pastor's kid is really hard. It's such a unique perspective to have. I mean, I was basically groomed for being a pastor for a really long time and began to eventually believe that that's what I was going to do for the rest of my life. I'd say the aspects of what's obviously bad about religion is the repressive tactics, but there's a lot of great aspects to it too. And I think that that's what becomes so complicated, is that even though it was my biggest wound in life, it was also sometimes my greatest joy. Some place that's always going to sound very worshipful in my music is because I spent a lot of time worshiping and crying and, you know, being joyful in places of ecstatic experience when I was younger, and that will always be somewhere there. Spirituality is kind of a language in and of itself. So many of these stories, so many myths and mythologies and history that I understand quite well because I grew up in it. So Three Rabbits is actually about an ancient symbol called, it's the three hares. It can be found across Europe, across Asia. It's shown up in Buddhist temples, it's shown up in early churches. The thought is that it has something to do with infinity, but the meaning is lost. And so it just kind of is a beautiful thing to look at, but not necessarily know. Is the lyric going to carry that way? It had specific meaning to me because I was going through my separation that was going to be my eventual divorce. Was also separating from my faith at the time, also was processing the fact that I was a trans woman. And all of that was hitting at the exact same moment. That line felt very immortal and very prophetic in the moment. And so I sang about it, and then the meaning changed as I, like, you know, came out on the other side, a changed woman. when I moved to Missoula, I moved here during a special time, is what it felt like. There were a lot of really cool bands that would just pop through. I had an opportunity with like my band Fools to like open for both Frankie Cosmos and Porches during the same show. You know, that's like, how? It's really cool. But out in Missoula, you know, that was an option. And so I stuck it out here because I was like, yeah, there's so many just like random things that pop up. So I've kind of just stuck around and nurtured that as much as I can, and believed that music can make a difference here. So.
Ash, super compassionate, super supportive. I mean, when we first started playing music together, my chops were not up to par. I probably wouldn't be playing music right now if I didn't play music with Ash, honestly.
Like a burning bridge over holy water, I will lay me down.
Missoula has like an excellent community in so many senses. And there's so much support now. It feels great to be in a place where there is kind of a mutual understanding as far as art and music is concerned.
Have always loved singing with Ash. It's like top 10 best feelings on planet. Love that song.
Me too. I had to overcome so much in order to be out. You know, I had to overcome so much in order to be like proud of my indigeneity. You know, I grew up in the Northwest and in the Midwest, and there's so much suppression of who you are. I think that every single time that I've had to like break off a limb, as much as it hurt, only allowed for something to grow back better. There's nothing better than being able to scream about it on stage and say like, you know, this is who I am and this is where I come from and it's never going away, you know. Like that assertion of autonomy is so vital for everyone. It's not just my thing. It's necessary for everyone to be able to say that in their life at one point, that this is who I am and it will never change. Like, this is the best part of me.
You Look Like Elliot is my favorite on the album, actually, and it's been my favorite for a really long time, like since she first wrote it. I just think it has such a amazing like attitude of it, of just like playfulness while saying something very serious and very like poignant and important.
But the initial inspiration for You Look Like Elliot was I was in a bar. I was in the Badlander way like one night, and I was there for karaoke, and this like younger guy came up to me and he like grabs my shoulder and he spins me around and he's just like, oh, like just like he turned me around basically to look me in the eye and look disappointed. He's like, I thought you were Elliot Smith. And he like kind of slumped his shoulders and turned around and walked away, which is really bizarre because first off, like, I'm an Indigenous trans woman and not a white man from Nebraska. So it's like just this very really strange feeling. There's just like a very bizarre experience of feeling erased, right? Like already as an Indigenous person. So to have like your music, which you know is like very unique and sounds like you, be compared to someone else, like there's a gentle irritation to it. So I was venting my frustration about that, and was venting my frustration about how there's pressure to maintain kind of like white standards in music, and how it's impossible to get paid. The lyrics speak for themselves in that song.
Like some mirrors started banging around my trash can. $5 worth of cheap booze in the poppies. I felt terror in the mirror of a white man telling me to choke it down like a common toilet bowl.
9 to 5 and you're in line to
Choke it down till you struggle like you're told.
coffee's black and cigarettes. That's a sugar.
Sugar's burn, that's the vomit before
Money stacks and torture. And
that's the way we try to get on up out of the cold. But every stream is brought to keep me I gotta pay my rent. I gotta pay my rent. I gotta pay my rent. That's just the way it goes. Hey Charlie, is that the way it goes?
That's just the way it goes.
Well, that's just the way it goes. That's just the way it goes.
I have two identical twin boys named Joel and Simon. If you're not good to yourself, you won't be good to your children. And I think that that's really honestly very telling, because our children are who we are. They're how we live on. And even as an Indigenous parent, I also understand that from a different lens, because I carry my parents and I carry my grandparents and I carry those who came before me. And and then I get to pass on my language and my feeling and my memories into my children, and have this kind of inheritance go all the way down. My songs are definitely like my children. I've bore them through so many different hard times. Like, I don't mean that in a sense like that I would understand, like, carrying a child to full term, but I definitely understand, like, the feeling of having to wait for your children to come along. There's nothing more incredible than that birthing process. And when they finally cross that tiny threshold. And I feel like that's honestly similar to how it feels sometimes in art, is that it's just this far away all the time. Mab was specifically in reference to Queen Mab, and about how our dreams are what kind of mother us through the moment, and mother us through our trauma in specific. Trauma is a very universal thing to experience. Everyone has it, whether they acknowledge it or not. And we often imagine things better than they were in order to get through. And so I was thinking about some of the thoughts that I kind of told myself when I was younger. Some dreams are helpful for the moment, but they end up hurting us later on because we don't know how to let go of them. At some point we have to trade in the dream for what actually happened. And so there was this kind of like frustration that I had, where I was like, oh, well, things were not as rosy or beautiful as they were. But in letting go of that dream, I also let go of the nurturing that it gave me. Yeah, healing looks different for everyone. And one of the aspects that I love about healing is that it can be very bleak at times. I mean, you have to acknowledge that you're in a place of needing to heal before you can ever really heal. I think one of the worst things about this reality right now is that we're encouraged to kind of get over it and just, you know, be like, oh, you're making too much noise, just pipe down or whatever. And we're encouraged to just like be functional instead of actually acknowledging what hurt us. And I think that when we go to places of what was hurting, what we end up finding is that it hurts a lot more than we think. And so to be able to kind of dig through the bone somewhat and get into the nitty-gritty is pretty heavy work. So I like to be able to facilitate that sometimes. I like to be able to have my music be a conversation that other people feel like they can be a part of.
Ash has a very special ability to take this very like raw, tender, like sort of formless emotional material and weave more of a story out of it where there's like meaning in the experience of the pain and transformation.
More than anything, I just encourage people to start their healing journeys. Music is a path to healing. It's more than just a liberal sentiment to say like, you know, things can get better. The only way they can get better is by acknowledging that things have been bad for us individually and acknowledging the parts of our personality and our behavior that are not great and indulging the grief to some degree and visiting the darker places and starting that journey. There's no other way.
She never